And we're back on the hunt with Supernatural 20th anniversary special. Guys, it is 20 years since Supernatural went on the air. My name is Chris Barrows.
And my name's Dan Cummins. Welcome back to the best supernatural podcast on the air. You know, Chris, we've actually we haven't uploaded anything in 4 months to the
Yeah.
day, if you could believe it. May 13th was our last upload. So maybe just right off the top here, before we get into the celebration, it's good to be back. You and I
Yes.
have already recorded more episodes, normal episodes to cover all of the episodes that we're rewatching. But of course, since this one is dropping first, thank you to everyone that's tuning in 4 months later, and also apologies for the wait, but we are back in full force. And Chris, when you came to me with this idea to celebrate the 20th anniversary and to drop this episode the day of, I thought it was a great way to return to our own show. But also it kind of rejuvenates me to get back into the rewatching because it reminds you just how long this show has been on air and beyond that, right? It's now 2025 as we record this. So the show has existed for 20 years, but it hasn't been on air for like what, 5 years now, roughly. So
Yeah, roughly 4 or 5 years. So it's interesting too because again, life happens, family things, etc., and we take that rest. But we're back to talk about the show. But I do think it's appropriate to start with this 20th anniversary special. And I got a question for you, Dan, because I'm going to show something to you here on the screen in a moment. But I have an important question for you. When you think of Supernatural, let's go back in time, right? We don't need Castiel for this.
sure.
So let's go back in time. CW put Supernatural on the air. Essentially, as I'm checking here, if I have this correctly, there's a few different days it ends up being on during that initial season that it comes on the air. But if you look at mid-fall and then you look at fall and then you look at winter, there's a few shows that were ahead of it. I wonder if you have any idea what those shows might have been that were on right before Supernatural. Just
Oh man,
take a
great
stab at
question.
it.
Yeah. Okay. So Jared had just done Gilmore Girls,
Yep.
right? He actually left the show, as I understand it, to do Supernatural. So I'm gonna guess that Gilmore Girls maybe is somewhere in that lineup. Are we talking like half hour before, half after, half
We're
hour
talking
after, or
like that half hour or hour before. And you are correct. So Gilmore Girls was one of
okay?
them. There's two other ones. It's Charmed and Smallville
Ah,
throughout the season that happened. So
okay.
what I want everyone kind of think about as we go back in time to 2025, this is the stuff that was new in 2025. And how much of this stuff do you even remember? So I mean, I'm only talking CW, by the way. I'm not going through like CW and WB. Technically, it was WB when it started, right?
Yes.
So the Bedford Diaries, Just Legal, Misconceptions, Modern Men, Pepper Dennis, Related, Supernatural, Survival of the Richest, and Twins. Do you remember? Do you know any of those?
In 2005, I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
So no, I probably shouldn't
But
have been watching TV past like 8 p.m. at this age. But no, I even still, Chris, I've never heard of most of those shows.
right, and the WB at this time, the ones you might have heard of that had on the air was Seventh Heaven,
Sure. Yeah.
Gilmore Girls, Smallville, and a few of these other ones. Charmed was on, and Charmed was
Yep.
one of the ones that went ahead. So I just put that kind of out there of where we are, right? So this airs, and we talked about this in our first episode, but we both come into the show at different times. You start this show, you know, at its beginning.
Yeah.
I actually started the show a few seasons in, and we talked about this in the pilot of this podcast about the fact that I had asked, is it worth, and I had asked the same question about Lost. I remember when I started Lost too. Is it worth watching past a certain season, or is it worth starting? And I got a resounding yes, you're going to love it. But I
Mm.
remember I started this at a later point. I didn't start it with that season one when it was initially airing. So for me, to discover the show, I obviously fell in love with it quickly, but I wasn't in like on day one like you were.
Yeah. Yeah. Day one for me, Chris, and I talked about Gilmore Girls already. Jared had left the show. My sister was a fan of his. So hearing that he was joining this new show, she was actually the one that wanted to check it out. I just wanted to hang out with my sister and my dad at that point. And so I asked my dad if I could watch it too. He said, "Yeah, why not? Let's check the show out." I think it was much darker than my sister was expecting, and even darker than my dad was expecting. You have to remember that this show stood out so much because of the tone,
Yeah.
because of I mean, just by nature, the genre, right? Like there, you mentioned Charmed, Chris. To some extent, that's a supernatural show, right? But it doesn't really delve into the lore of real life monsters the way that Supernatural does. So
Right.
off the bat, this show was something new, something special, something, dare I say, edgy, Chris. Compared to the other shows you mentioned, this show was taking risks that others were not, even in the pilot. And so, yeah, I started on day one, and pretty much from there on out, I was watching every episode as it went live. I think I stopped that around season 6, season 7, Chris. I thought, there are rumors that the showrunner was leaving, which was Eric Kripke famously left. The show was going in a different direction. I myself I was going to school now. I didn't quite have the time to be there every single Tuesday night or whatever it was. Um, but I stuck with the show and ultimately watched it until the end. So yeah, I've been a day oneer, but you know, like everyone listening to this podcast, hopefully you still rewatch it over and over again. So it kind of doesn't matter when you started, in my opinion, except that I can share my own experiences without having, Chris, you mentioned 2005. That was the year YouTube came out,
Yeah.
right? Like people finding the show today, they could go and watch a YouTube video about a review of the episode before they even give it a chance, right? I think that's the difference. And that's maybe the perspective I can bring is that when I was watching this, we didn't have those resources available to us. I wasn't researching the show or, I don't even know when Twitter came out, but like I didn't go and research Jensen's personal life or Jared's, like all of these outside noise factors weren't contributing to my experience. And so now I encourage people to try to rewatch the show without getting into it too much. And that's your experience too, right? You kind of just jumped right in. You didn't do any research. You heard it was kind of like X-Files, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah. I heard you like the X-Files, you like this show. Because I liked
Sure.
supernatural stuff. I enjoyed supernatural stuff. So I mean, this show comes out and you've got a story of, obviously two brothers and they're fighting monsters. And I'm like, okay, that sounds cool.
Sounds
Yeah.
great.
That
Yeah.
sounds good. I'll watch that. Right. And I was aware of Jared because of Gilmore Girls as well. So I had that awareness of Jared himself, and my wife said, "Oh yeah, he was on Gilmore Girls." So that was about all I had, and because I had been I had been dating my wife at the time, and we might have even been engaged when I started watching. So I just remember it being one of those things like, yeah, now I'm going to start watching this, and it's become my favorite show. And I think that's the thing when we talk about why we even do this, right? Why we cover this, it's we started it mostly for us, right? Like, and
Yeah.
the fact that people, tune in and listen along with us, that's awesome. But this was never about anything more at the start than, hey, a reason to get together, talk about our favorite show. And I think that's at the heart of the fandom, right? It's why the show lasted 15 years. We've talked about the later seasons aren't as good as the first 5 in most cases, and there may be some
Yeah.
exceptions, right, with some episodes, but it lasted because we care about the characters. It's not about the greater plot line in those later seasons as much as it is the characters, and we love the characters. We even love villains in the show. Like, there's such a gray line in this show that I don't feel exists in a lot of shows. There's a very clear line usually with the hero and the villain in most shows on television. And I
Right.
know there's more gray lines probably today than there were, but I still feel like this one constantly makes you question, am I cheering this guy right now? Or am I cheering this character right now? And we do constantly. We have moments where, I mean, one of my favorite characters completely introduced as the mother of the king of hell and a witch, and she becomes literally one of these characters that I find to be just endearing. Like it's she's very endearing in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you're touching on, Chris, is the question of how has this show continued to stay as relevant and as popular as it is, right? I think this show, what makes it so special is that it is extremely rewatchable.
Yes.
I don't think there are a lot of things that will age this show too badly. You know, they're not reliant on technology all that much. Of course, you do see Sam with some cell phones and some laptops that are clearly outdated, even by 2020's standards, right? But for the most part, the show relies on the characters and their arcs and the relationships. And I think the two leads, they really have chemistry that you can't manufacture. Like they got, I don't want to call it luck, Chris, but
Oh, it's luck.
the
I
the
I could
casting, yeah,
it's luck. I mean, you can't guarantee that. You
yeah,
don't guarantee camaraderie in a cast, and if you've listened to people talk about it, uh, the actors who've been on the show, and they talk about how welcoming both those lead roles are to anyone who comes in, because anyone comes in has, generally speaking, been working for a while with these
mm,
guys.
right,
And they say, "Oh no, we come in and they're incredibly welcoming." You feel like you are part of a group on day one. In most cases, I know there's some exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, when you hear people talk about coming onto the set, that's generally what you hear.
yeah, yeah. So I'm the characters, the actors themselves obviously play a vital role in that. And I've said this before, but I would watch an episode of Sam and Dean just hanging out, drinking beers, watching some football on TV. Like I'm not
Yeah.
even kidding. I think that the banter, the dialogue, the situational comedy that you find in this show, those two characters are so believable and the chemistry is so good that you literally would watch them watch paint dry. Now, of course, they're not doing that, Chris. You throw that into the crazy world that is Supernatural, hunters, monsters, the men of letters. You can go on and on and on. Angels, demons. I mean, it's such a rich world. Wizard of Oz, for hell, right? Like we've covered the gambit already, and we're only in what are we in season 8 now, Chris? So I
We
mean,
are in the middle of we just started season 9. So I mean, we are a little over halfway, right? But it feels like there's a lot more to go in terms of what we have to cover.
yeah,
And for those who may be listening and just being excited about it being the show being 20 years and a celebration. And again, we're recording this ahead, so we don't know. There's speculation. Are they going to announce something? Is there going to be something cool that happens? We don't know. We in this moment we're recording, so we have no clue, right? But that's the kind of thing with this show, is it always feels just like The Boys, that it's going to come back,
yeah.
right? So even at 20 years, which is only a few years away from when the show ended, people are already saying, "Hey, so is it time to bring it back? What's happening?"
Hey, listen, you never say never. We're seeing some properties across television and film that I didn't think would ever come back, Chris. Like the one that comes to mind is gosh, help me out here because I know you have young kids. It's the movie with the three witches, the sister witches. And
Oh, yes, yes. Oh my god, I'm having a moment now. You
maybe you
hit
could
me.
pull that up as I
Yeah.
cover it. But
No,
but they
you
just did a sequel to that movie, and they brought back Sarah Jessica Parker, the other actresses, and I think everyone thought, why do this? It's gonna bomb. This was such a niche thing. And listen,
Well,
there's
it's
gonna be
Hocus
people that
Pocus. I
Hocus
had that
Pocus.
moment. It's
Thank you.
Hocus Pocus. And it's funny you mentioned Hocus Pocus, because the quick funny story I always tell people with Hocus Pocus, and this is dating myself, but I remember when Hocus Pocus, the first time it came out, and I remember there was a trailer, and there, as a kid, I was mad and annoyed, right? And this is, again, that type of memory that we have, mad and annoyed, because there's a scene where they're in the trailer where they were in like a grocery store, and it
Mhm.
wasn't in a movie. And I remember that's what I remember about that movie. But yeah, it's true. That came back, and you have some of these other things, supernatural-esque things coming back. It's not just,
Yeah.
something like Supernatural's certainly got a place to come back. Is it too soon? I guess that's the fair question, right? Like, what is too soon for something like that, and what's the reason The Boys come back? But it is something that I think you see the fandom's always okay with the show coming back, even if it
Yeah.
didn't embrace the Winchesters.
Yeah, I'll close my thought on the possible sequel, Chris. I would like to think that Jared, Jensen, Misha, if he's a part of it, I would like to think that they will hold out until they have a good enough story to warrant a movie, a series, a full blown season. And I'm of the same nature. If you ask me, do you want more Supernatural? My default answer is no. I feel like they covered everything they need to cover. I thought it was a pretty good ending. I know it's divisive amongst the fans out there. I thought it ended well. I like Dean's ending. Sam's ending was okay. You know, I always wanted to see him grow old and have a kid and all that. Unless, unless, and I'm not going to say it has to be Kripke himself. That would be fantastic, Chris. That's my
Right.
ideal situation. Kripke comes back and he says, "Hey, I have an idea. It'll be a 2-hour return. We'll splice it up into 4 episodes, whatever." If they have a good story to tell and it involves the core cast, I don't want Sam's son. I don't want, you
No.
know, I don't want any of that. Um, I'll restrain myself, Chris. I don't want any of that junk. Okay, I want Sam and Dean. Maybe cast. Don't need cast. But I also want a really good story and a really good production team and writers that understand and care about the property. What I don't want is Warner Brothers to say, "Hey, remember that really popular show that's still popular on Netflix? We're running out of ideas. Let's bring that back from the dead. Here's a junk script and let's just pay these guys, $20 million each." I don't want that. Please don't do that.
I'm good with limited series return. I like a
Yeah.
limited series return, and I want to echo something you've said before. And for anyone who has listened to us and recap, they'll remember you saying this, Dan. But we've talked about if it came back, it'd
Mm,
be cool if they could add a little bit of that edge
yeah.
with like an HBO Max or something like that level where they have a little bit more capability.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they need to go where they're flat out cursing. I don't think you have to like change that, right? I just need I think you need to add a little bit of that edge. That's season 1, season 2, season 3. I mean, I'm gonna just flat out say it. Like there are a lot has changed. I mean, I'm gonna bring it up for those, and I'm gonna start doing some videos for these along the way, Dan, as I've noted to you. And one of the things I'll point out is like, look at this. Just look at this. And I know, and if you are listening, you cannot see this, but that is Sam and Dean pilot episode, right? You want to consider time going by. Well, this is how it ends. Like
Mm,
we've had a journey with these guys, right? So to bring them back, to put them back on our screen, it's to your point, got to be worthwhile. I
yeah.
don't want it to be just to fix the COVID ending. And let's be real. You talk about the ending. I think a lot of reason people don't like the ending, which we're going to recap eventually. We're going to get there. I think a lot of the reason people don't like the ending is because they know what it could have been.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I
because
think
it
that's
was
a large
leaked.
part of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's a huge part of it. Uh, we will debate and discuss that as we get to recaps, but I think that is part of it. So I want to stress that. But like you see these guys and what they've been through their journey. It's again, it's one of these things where I'm just like, yeah, like bring them back, but make it the right way. I'm
Yeah.
sure they have ideas. I would take. I think you're gonna get though. I think you'll end up getting at some point something that is more limited and not like another launch of an entire show. I
Yeah.
think that ship has sailed with most shows, and I just don't think it works. You'll probably maybe a Gilmore Girls type thing, like what they did, where it's like they did like a 4 seasons of thing, which then left a cliffhanger, by the way, and pissed people off. But don't do that. Give us another sound ending to whatever that is. But there's got to be like some sort of crisis in heaven or something. I don't know what else it could be.
Well, listen, I'm going to tie your 2 points together, Chris, and if you have a moment to pull that first picture back up for us,
Yeah.
maybe the key to a sequel series is tied into the fact that this will not be back on cable. I think the reason that it starts to get brighter and less edgier is because you're appealing to a wide demographic, right? When you're on cable television, this was WB. When WB became CW, obviously you're opening more doors, more eyes are on this show. You have to brighten it up a little bit. I think if you take it off cable, and I agree with you. If this show's ever coming back, it's not going to be on cable TV. It's going to be
No.
straight to stream, right? It'll probably be on HBO Max, which means, Chris, maybe they can go back to this darker tone. And when you go back to this darker tone, I don't know, maybe there are more stories you can tell there, right? You can only tell a certain amount and level of story if you have to sort of, bolt on the training wheels, so to speak. Like if you know that there is possibly a 9-year-old watching your show, you can't produce a story that only an 18-year-old would actually find cool, right? Like I think if you go to streaming, the way back in, Chris, is to do a darker story. And maybe that means getting a little gorier. Like maybe it means you get out of heaven, you go to, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, Chris. You go to purgatory. Like, yeah, we went to purgatory, but we didn't explore it all that much. Like there's
No.
still a lot of storytelling to do there. Maybe they go to a different dimension or something. I don't know. But the point is that like trying to continue the story that they've already done isn't going to work. You have to change the angle a little bit. And if you're not on cable anymore, maybe that allows you to be a little bit darker, a little bit more mature, more adult, if you will.
You could, and I will just say this, you could end up doing, and we're not pitchmen here, right? But you could also do something where you bring back a fan favorite who maybe had an ending that was not right, that somehow they are still here because it's very supernatural to do that. And they're causing mayhem again, and bring back a Crowley or bring someone like that back in an interesting way. And it's not like this is a show that can't just bring someone back.
Yeah.
It can do that. So I bottom line, I'm with you. I stand with you there. As we talk about this, I do want to make sure we hit on one thing before we end up wrapping this, and certainly encourage people to go start rewatching the show again, have some fun. We've got the recaps now going through 9 seasons. We're back with episodes, and we're going to continue this journey all the way through 15 seasons as promised. That said, Dan, you go back to that first episode. Now, we went on and we did this show, right? And we recorded. Is there anything that's changed in how you think about that first episode, that pilot episode, now that we've now done the rewatch? Because we had first feelings about going back to it, but now, what does that first episode make you feel in perspective to having actually started to rewatch more than half of the show?
Yeah. Wow. Well, first of all, Chris, I'd go back in time and buy a better mic because if you listen to my audio on our coverage of the pilot, I mean, you could barely hear what I'm saying because I'm using my built-in PC mic. Aside from that, if we're talking about the actual show itself, I think my appreciation now for that pilot episode, and to describe it in 3 words, it's less is more. Where we're at now, Chris, is that there are so many characters and so many rules and so many monsters and so many restrictions. So, there's just so much baggage that comes with watching the show now. But when I revisit the pilot, they were very careful as to what was coming into the universe, right? They were very selective. And I think that actually stayed that way until around season 4, right? Castiel shows up, but then you introduce the angels and then you introduce demons. And like, as new waves of writers come in, Chris, they have to follow those rules. Or in a lot of ways, they just throw the rules out the window. Actually, Bobby knew Sam and Dean since they were kids. No, he didn't. He didn't actually. If you go back and rewatch like the first, 3 seasons. So there's a lot of continuity errors as you go on, Chris. But I look at that pilot episode and I say, wow, this was so simple. I could just like focus on the monster, Sam, Dean, and just like the raw edginess of the show. Like they really cared about the lighting. They really cared about the monster design. Like they really crafted such a fine piece of television that more or less goes out the window when you start to focus more on narrative, focus more on just like getting the show onto the slate, right? Like I don't think it's totally fair, Chris, but there's something to be said about a pilot for every television show. Sometimes the pilot is wildly different than what the show ends up being. This is not that, but certainly they really swung for the fences in this pilot, but they did it with such care and such such little room for error. Like it's so tight, this pilot, and I love rewatching it. And I actually rewatched it last night to prepare for this. And yeah, I mean it's September 12th today, Chris. This is like the perfect thing to watch around Halloween. And
Yes.
I know we're going to talk about other Halloween episodes we like as we get closer in our rewatch podcast, but this is like the perfect episode to watch this time of year here on the East Coast, at least.
Yeah, I wanted to point out for people too, and we've got this up on the screen for the video that will be on the YouTube here. But the Sam and Dean Winchester were trained by their father to hunt creatures of the supernatural. Now their father's mysteriously disappeared while hunting a demon that killed their mother 22 years ago. That director was David Nutter. That writer was Eric Kripke. And you've got Jared Jensen and Sarah Shahi on there as the stars of this episode, which is again, that's what it was. This was the beginning, and it's exciting. Again, I know we were looking at some of the photos, but like even just when you go and look at the character in this first one, which was this phenomenal,
Yeah.
interesting character of a mother who doesn't want to return home. Like I just it's visually ingrained in my
Yes.
head.
Yeah.
And so credit where it's due. This episode nailed it. And to your point, I just want to say, I love what you point about the episode not being necessarily different than what the rest of the show is. Whereas like Lost has this big explosive opening, and a lot of these Heroes has a big explosive like opening kind of episode in a different way of where you just start to meet people.
Yeah.
All very unique. This isn't necessarily unique as a pilot. It's just tight, tells a good story, and hits you with enough moments like Sam's girlfriend burning on the ceiling of her bedroom,
Yeah.
and and like what a way to end an episode. And it's a special beginning, I think. And when it comes down to it, I'm glad that we're going on this. And before we end it, I think it's important to point out, Dan, the episode ends with this iconic shot, as we know. Shutting a trunk, we've got work to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's important we pull back the curtain on something too, because every episode of this show, we end and you say we've got work to do. And I always think it's funny because it's like, so yeah, of course, that's really cool, right? Like, and it's an obvious ending. It seems obvious, but nothing that we did after in that first episode was planned. We just said we're gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
Because we wanted to talk about Supernatural. We said, let's try it. Let's film an episode and see where it goes. And I remember you saying, we've got work to do. And I in my mind, I just remember going, oh, that's perfect. So
Yeah.
I want to point that out, that just like the pilot episode, we say do that every episode. And I appreciate it because it brings me back into that show and back to the heart of the show, which was started with that pilot episode.
Yeah, it's like the spirit of the show. We've got work to do. It's not a job. They're not getting paid. Like this is just their calling, or they seem to adopt it as their calling. And that's such a unique factor of the show, Chris, for your protagonist to believe in that. We've talked about it being very, what should I say? Very inspired by Star Wars. We've mentioned that a lot, and you definitely get that same kind of feeling from your two lead characters, that they do this because they believe in like a greater purpose, which is saving people, hunting things, right? The family business. So yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing this show with you, Chris. Of course, it is work in some sense for us to schedule these and come up with show notes and set aside time to record it. But thank you to everyone that has listened so far, and hopefully you'll watch these moving forward. Chris, you and I do this on video anyway, so I think it's a great opportunity to continue to upload these as videos if you care to watch it. If not, and you just want to listen on your way to work or at the gym, however you want to listen to them, we appreciate every single view and listen and comment and DM on Reddit or Instagram or Twitter. We're all over the place, so be sure to find this over there too. But yeah, what a special day, Chris, to reflect on 20 years. I love this show. I love talking about it with you and other people on the internet. And I love Eric Kripke for bringing the show to life. He had such a vision, Chris. Like and that's another thing from the pilot. Like you can see there is a vision behind this. This isn't some show that some guy's trying to make to get his start in Hollywood, right? This guy knew exactly what he wanted to do. And from the jump, you feel that. And that is the beauty of Supernatural. Once that guy leaves, other people take it, and it's like a used piece of clothing, right? Like you get a jacket from Goodwill, you see that jacket's been loved, you're gonna wear it and you're gonna love it, and of course it's gonna have a lot of different stories, but for that jacket to be on television for as long as it did, pretty special. I love talking about it.
I agree. And so I hope people will join us. This is the Back on the Hunt podcast. We invite you to come back on the hunt with us. Links, as always, provided for the show, and where you can go back and if you've not started your journey, come start your rewatch today. It's a perfect day to return to Supernatural and rewatch the show with us, going back to episode 1. But Dan, I say that is it for this week's episode, but we will be back because after all,
we've got work to do.